Guten Tag. Ich bin Brad Kittel. Brad W. William Kittel. Ich bin in Deutschland geboren. Ansbach, near Nürnberg. Mi padre, mi pater, var un americano. Y mi madre, mi multi-americana. Pero en español, or ich bin geboren in Ansbach. I've been lucky in my life. My parents are both American. I was born in Ansbach, Germany. I was fortunate because I don't live there now, so I can speak freely. I can use my time. The one thing we have in life that we can measure. You might have 1 or 2 vials of sand. How long is that? How many words can you speak? How many words can you write? My name is Brad William Kittel. The name you get, the gene pool you choose to be born into, when you pick your father and your mother and you agree to come into this world, to manifest in body, energy soul, Wub, in the book of Wibblry and Wub. Wub is the energy soul we call chi or prana or source. It is a name in a fantasy fiction about a young man named Darby, who comes into the world in a very difficult way, through parents that didn't love each other, but happened to make love, thanks to my father's own mother brewing the hooch, the alcohol in the old days, homebrew, that my mother supposedly in her story drank on the last date, in which she ended up in the back seat and they had some intimacy and a seed was left behind, as we know how it can happen. And my father went off to Germany, a soldier, never thinking back that he was going to be getting married over that. Not long after that, being a good Catholic boy, my mother found out that she was pregnant and claimed my father to be the man who impregnated her. And so therefore, he flew her to Germany as a good soldier and married her just in time that I was able to sneak out of the womb in the Catholic cloak of not going to limbo. I was not a bastard child. He was not a bad father. My mother was now, though Protestant, married at least to the Catholic. That went on to have my brother born a year and a half later, my sister born a year and a half later, and ultimately, we came back to the United States. And when we did, well, you know what? I had dual citizenship. I was born in 1955 in a rare, narrow window because I was flown over there just in time before my brother, who was born, was automatically naturalized. But I, turns out, had dual citizenship, which meant that I could become a German or I could be an American. And all I had to do was effectively join the U.S. Army for a brief amount of time to gain my citizenship, my natural citizenship, and then be able to go to Germany without being inducted into the German army to serve the mandatory time in Germany. Now, the draft had just ended in high school as I was getting in my senior year. Vietnam was kind of coming to a close and Nixon was getting us out of there. And my dad was already had served and was back from Vietnam. In those days, when I joined at 17 and a half, I had a 2-year enlistment because people were so desperate to get people in the army. And I was a smart kid. I was crippled. They kind of looked by that, my bad back and the history of, things like that. They ignored that because I was also smart. So I got to go into crypto computers of all things, the earliest crypto computers. We pulled out a whole drawer and it was 220 volts. If you stuck your hand in there, you get electrocuted. I almost did. Saw stars. I know what 220 volts can do to you. I later, before I got out, I was working on the newest ones. They're about this big, about this tall, weighed about 50 pounds. And that was the newest modular crypto computers in the world. In the Army, we was using them to go ahead and send messages out to the missile bases. and back. And I used to service those back in the days. We did the teletypewriter, had a little tape. We fed the tape into there, and then we sent these signals out, the messages, through a card with a bunch of holes in it at each end that had to be changed out every 12 hours and matched up at every missile base that we were going to communicate with from the headquarters in Pirmasens, Germany. This is 1980, oh my goodness, excuse me, 1970s. Long time ago. So 1973 and 4 and 5, I was in the U.S. Army. You can see pictures of me, expert marksman. But I learned how to shoot when I was 13 because as an Army brat, we were given 50 rounds of .22 ammo and got to shoot every Saturday morning at 7 o'clock for free in the downstairs under the theater shooting range that was run by the Army because it was on the Army post. And we were all being trained to be expert marksmen in case that we were ever attacked. Americans living on a German soil with a perimeter and everything, that we would be able to defend ourselves, even as kids. So the guns we were shooting were equivalent to what Lee Harvey Oswald would have used in lower caliber, just .22s. So when I came back from Germany after John F. Kennedy had been assassinated, they said Lee Harvey did that, and I went, bullshit, I'm shot, no, can't do that. And I was accused of being a conspiracy theorist because I knew how guns worked and been trained in the military and got my expert marksman, pro marksman, expert medals by every weekend being scored, and then going to watch a movie in those days for, by the way, 25 cents. We went to the movie and got our popcorn. And this is, of course, 1963, 4, 5. So anyway, in the early days of the Army, I didn't understand what my dad did. But later on, I found out. My dad joined the Army so he could go kill people. He wanted to go kill Koreans. He was disappointed that he got in too late. My dad was an old-fashioned man who was brought up in Michigan, redneck. And of all things, he had the name Cattell. Our heritage was German. My uncle was in the Navy, 2 uncles in the, 3 of my uncles, including my dad, of the 5 boys, went in the military. It was expected. Go off to fight Germans. Of all things, we'd only been over in this country from Germany 1 generation, in some cases. So, the Cattell name actually goes back to Germany, believe it or not. There were very few Cattells in the United States when I first arrived over here as a child. Even as a teenager, there were less than 900 and maybe 1,000. So the Cattell name, K-I-T-T-E-L, goes all the way back in history, believe it or not. I didn't. I just found out now that I'm in my 60s and 7. I'm 70 now. Where did I come from? Where did I get these genes? Why am I always all my life wanting to be a writer? But guess what? Sometimes it's because that's what you're sent to do. Now, in the background, you'll see a couple things. The Don Quixote. Recognize that? For me, that was premonition. For me, that meant my ability to go ahead and to get through my crisis of trying to defend the weak, to try to do right. And so, go sit down. Go lay down, baby. My dear dog and my friend, who's also like a 7-year-old, is at my feet again. That'd be Rocky. Has a sore foot. Now, I'm getting water out of a copper, and I think this is one of the important things. If you believe in youthing, how do you honor thy vessel? Use copper to keep your water in. Don't drink tap water. Inside of there, you'll find I have shungite. I always keep shungite at the bottom because that has crystals that then charge up the water with what you equivalent of sort of carbon-60, but in its best form, Russian shungite. Now, that combined with the copper and your water sitting in there before you drink it, preferably out of a copper cup. In this case, it's not going to be in there long, but sometimes that actually tells a story, what cup you're drinking out of. I have a couple cups, but sometimes a story can be held in a small space. In small spaces, things like this that were made ages ago. That goes back to the Ying Dynasty. That's in China. Human creativity is far, far, far beyond what our capacity now demonstrates. And I'm one who is hyper creative. They apparently came up with a hyper something for everything. I'm hyperactive, no doubt about that. I do have an attention deficit issue because I'm like a squirrel. And next thing you know, I burn my eggs. This week I managed to burn 3 meals out of 6 I've tried to cook. I have to sit in front of it. If I walk away and leave the fire on, I get distracted. But you know what? It's because I have so many things going on. And that's not a bad thing. I'm typing at 150 words a minute. I'm in a flow at times of more than that. And I'm drawing pictures and cartoons that have meaning. But people will probably never see them. Most people don't see what you do in your lifetime. Now, some of the drawings I've done in the past, there's meaning to them. I'm supposing you can actually see this because, of course, like most things, this is being done and produced by me and poorly edited. But I wanted to give you an idea. Also, the drawings. When I was young, I didn't believe I could draw. When I was first starting out writing the book of Wibblry and Wub, I was in college, and Rubbles, my avatar, my teacher, he actually was instrumental in getting me to understand that we have to have the worms. We have to have the bees. I was brought up by a family that killed things. Naturally, they killed love, they killed imagination. They weren't allowed to whistle in the house. If I whistled in the house, that just meant I should be in a barn. Now, this actually depicts in my imagination, if you look, you'll see Dragon's Lair. And Dragon's Lair is a rock that's underneath the water called Dragon's Lair Pond. Next to it's an island. And you can see in the future there's going to be tiny houses around it as I've created all this in my 60s. Actually, I was about 66 when I did this. And we had a great cave, you'll see on my writings. I published about 10 million words on my Substack site. And I'm about to try to figure out and pull it off and edit it all. I've never had an editor. Hey, know any good editors? I need one. And so yeah, this is just a drawing that shows how this is all going to fit out with little houses, tiny houses. And I'm notable for being able to do this. I'm not just making up when you do tiny houses. This is the islands with a bridge. And this is a whole area you'll see in the Song of Salvage. Please go on YouTube. And one of the versions is the kayak bayous. And you'll see how I imagine things. Now, this is the entrance to Salvage, Texas. I had the street name Salvage Way. It was confusing. They kept changing my address every time somebody started to know where I was at. 20501 East IH10. I've still got cards, business cards, with that address on. They changed it. 1212 East IH10. Nobody could find that. Oh goodness. So finally, let's name it. I got the state to let me name the street Salvage Way. So we have 2 addresses on Salvage Way. 111 Salvage Way. And 333 Salvage Way, which is the dead end of Salvage Way, which adds up to 9. Or 33 1/3 degree, or whatever you want to make it positively. There was a reason. Premonition is a wonderful thing. You actually draw in advance what's going to happen. Sadly, this is probably one of the most disturbing visions I ever had in my life. And I want you to know I had this back in the day. These are incidentally leaded crystal hand cut by men in 1835. Supposedly these men didn't have a lot of technology. They were just dumb old men in 1835. I don't believe that. We had all sorts of additional forms of energy. Now, the reason I'm going to put this up here is because I want you to study this picture if you can. It's called Funorama or Funorama. And, you know, I put this on because I'll probably try to use this as a guide to edit this, because everybody says I'm, a little high spectrum and tend to get distracted. I'm doing my very best to talk slowly because I tend to also use my Michigander accent, which is, if you don't know, 300 words a minute. Now, when I lived in Michigan, in a basement. My dad had paneled the basement on the end of Moody Street, a dead-end street. This is Darby talking to you about his life. Was it true? Well, let's just say for the moment, I, Brad Cattell, am writing the story about Darby and his life. Now, my dog is getting excited. I'm going to let him go out in the back. I want you to study that for a second, and I will return. Go out there. Go scare him off. Bark. I created an environment out of what was an industrial landfill. I have 4 miles of shoreline. And I was wondering what the predator was going to be to take care of the smaller animals. And so you end up with the foxes, and you end up with coyotes, and you can't kill things off because this is all part of the nature. Beavers, otters, all these things moved in once they had water and ponds. There was nothing here before that. It was basically like a funeral home because somebody used it as an industrial landfill when they had a foundry, and they made stainless steel, which meant you added copper and cobalt and all sorts of things, molybdenum, but you also threw away all your waste, and your molds with the sand that absorbed all the contaminants that you poured into molds. The metal, then pure, would be sent away to the machine shops. But what was left over was piled into gullies and valleys and turned into really a problem. So I decided to remediate that. In the process of trying to pay off the property, the bank decided to go predator on me. And I ended up fighting them for many years because they wouldn't listen to me. I said, let me just finish paying you. But the property appeared to be worth a lot more back then, and now it is worth a lot more again. But it took me a decade of remediation and digging and closing things off and making it possible for life to thrive again where there was nothing before. The beavers moved up, the otters moved in, the turtles, the fish, the birds come from all over the world to eat because there's so few bugs left in the outer world. The lights are killing them, the radiation's killing them, the beehives are diving. It's horrible from my view. My view, I've spent the last, I bought this in 2007, nearly 20 years. In the beginning, 5 years before that, I would tell my ex-wife, I need to buy that one day. It had been for sale forever. I didn't know why, I just knew nobody bought it and I was gonna buy it one day. And she said, why? We don't need that. We got all we need. I was in my 50s, I already retired once, I was trying to raise my son. I retired from real estate the first time. Mind you, I came to Texas in a school bus with $640 my name. $640 in 1984 was a lot more than $640 now. But it weren't much, and I had no license plates valid, I had no insurance, I had no inspections on my school bus that I left Florida with several years earlier. After graduating from college and going off to write the great American novel, not understanding what life was about yet, just imagining I could do that. So what happened over time, I wanted to be a writer. I knew I was going to be censored if I wrote it. I found out what the publishers did. They put you on the shelf and you never get to see the day. You'd never be marketed. They would steal your information just like they're doing now. I've read the new rules. They're going to take away the artist's right to protect these kinds of things. That's not right. What kind of things? My drawings. Look at that drawing. It's not AI. It's real. Come. Keep it. You go lay down. So, what makes it different? AI can't duplicate this. Not necessarily just the fact that it exists, but I saw this in 1972. Maybe 71, before Omega Man, before the movies and things that are supposed to happen to go ahead and help you understand what's really going on, to make you aware, the full disclosure of what can happen in the future. The future, of course, has already happened. We're just in the process of helping form it. That's what we came for. That's why we reincarnate and why we create, reincarnate, is also a matter of creating, being created, in body, I, identity, incarnate, carnate, in flesh. So reincarnate means simply coming back into flesh again, and operating on the book of Wibblry and Wub, the key. These are keys. These unlock at the right time in awareness what is happening. The funerama. When you understand, my son passed away. He gave us a song. He put music to my words because I had never managed to play music other than whistle. Thank you, my son, dear Adam. Brad Gittell. He put to music my song of salvage, a poem I wrote. And for a child who was autistic and sense of he was not necessarily focused. He didn't make all A's like I did effortlessly. He didn't do so many things that I did effortlessly. And I thought maybe that, it's because he was, first 3 months of pregnancy, he was raised on milkshakes. That's all she would drink. And then the second 3 months after the doctor said you can't do that, she went to hot and sour soup exclusively from the restaurant across the highway. And then finally in the last 3 months, he came out and turned out to be a wonderful 6'4" tall boy, but he was dyslexic and had a lot of issues trying to learn. He was hyperactive, but we didn't move like I did when I was a kid. I changed schools 13 times before I graduated high school. I didn't fit in well. I was always strange. I grew up created in the Americas, born in Germany, came back to America, went back to Germany with a dad who was pretty upset about Vietnam, and been over to my beatings, but I also went from Germany to the United States, and as a child broke my back and went to South America and lived in La Paz, Bolivia, and learned to get disciplined not to cry for no reason, which I thought was a good thing. But unfortunately I had pain in the chest because I broke my back when I crashed the Studebaker. It didn't dent very much for the amount of damage it did to the trailer I hit, the mobile home RV, because my mother left me in the front seat, unbuckled, in my little Sunday suit at the driver's seat, and I pulled it into gear, and she didn't have the emergency brake set well enough. And while she sat there with my brother and my sister in her belly, I can distinctly remember waving as we went forward, and I had the steering wheel. I had no contact with the brake or anything, but it wasn't a long hill. I hit it. Nobody thought anything of it, except I'd broken my back. Mom didn't mention to Dad, because Dad's kind of a hard guy to deal with when he was drunk and angry. And so it kind of got missed, and we went on. And over time, I got a number of spankings, and my dad's version was, get your belt, grab your ankles, bend over, take your licking, and don't cry. You're learning not to cry over nothing. You want something to cry about? This is something to cry about. That's abuse in this day and age. I understand that. But some of us were brought up that way, especially children of the army. The army that was sent away, and as long as you drank alcohol, like you were allowed to do in the officer club and the NCO club, separately. Keep in mind, in military society, the non-commissioned officers, the troops that go out there and get slaughtered or killed or sent out to go ahead and do the stupid things that get them captured, and the officers in the low ranks. The officers don't go and party with the sergeants in the lower ranks. None of the officers do. And there's a reason for that. Because familiarity breeds contempt. And you're allowed to go ahead and drink, get drunk, and forget what you did. But you can't do it with the officers, otherwise you'll be fighting each other. So you go get drunk at an officers club and argue over there. You get drunk over there, but you don't get together and get drunk. That's one of the basic rules of the military. You didn't know that? That's how you get rid of the pain, the memories. But you can't smoke pot. If you do, the brainwashing wears off. And you don't want to kill innocents. That's the way it works. Another story, another time. So, when you grew up in that kind of a family, and you're crippled, and you're coming into towns full of rednecks, and they like to beat up on people that are four-eyed, blind. I was blind by 7 years old. I was legally blind without my glasses with a walking stick by 10 years old, 12 years old. Luckily I could wear glasses. They were big and thick, and they were Army issued black Billy Holly glasses. 4-eyed crowd. And I had a number of different names they called me. In the days of little kittles and skedaddle kittles. If you haven't ever seen a skedaddle kittle or little kittle, they're little tiny dolls about this big with hair as long as their whole body. And they would dance around and stuff like that. And I get off the school bus and everybody go ahead and sing the little skedaddle call in the song and laugh and make fun of me. And so I grew up a depressed child in Michigan and other places. And yeah, at the same time, smart. Unfortunately, too smart. And what is too smart? Whew. Suppose, let's discuss the picture for a moment. What do you see? What did I once see? Wibblry, when Darby goes away and keeps leaving, he can't believe it. He goes back and asks Rubbles after that first time. The prelude assumes that Darby paid attention and came back and never questioned. Well, don't believe it. Darby questioned every day. Why me, God? Why'd you pick broken old me? And when he come home from school, having to run through the woods so the kids wouldn't knock him on the ground and piss on him like they did his friends that couldn't run as fast, despite broken back. Darby knew his way through the woods across the creeks. His friends did not. His friends fell down. His friends were pissed on and never, ever came out the back door of the school with him again. The stories Darby can tell, and does, in the book of Wibblry and Wub. It's on Substack. You can't hardly find it like every place else. These stories are written, and they're well hidden. But once upon a time, before that happened, this is a funeral home. And in the front you see a casket. It's a glass front, so you can go and open display. Everybody comes and watches. And when I was young and saw this scene at 15, and came into view and saw, wow, look at this, it's a funeral. It's a memorial. Except I couldn't see my son in the casket after I picked him up at the mortuary in Notre Dame Cathedral, before it burned, the old version. Behind it was a mortuary. Above it was a cemetery, hundreds of years old. A place where if you didn't pay the dues, they'd dig up your monuments and replace you. I know, I bought some of the monuments years ago when I had an antique store. Where did these come from? Oh, they couldn't pay the dues. Yeah. Those are used. That's the story of most of the world. When you go in East Paris, there's entire caverns filled with bones, skulls. In a day when there was not enough space to bury all the bodies from the wars. There are so many children killed in battle, sent there because all the adults were gone, sold off by parents who could not afford to have children. That's how soldiers begun. These are the days of old. Seldom does anybody know how that goes. But if your parents were killed, or your parents are starving, and you got 6 kids, and your 2 oldest boys are taken away for war, 12 years old, 14 years old. That was reality in the days of King James. Using all these boys and troops to go ahead and, after writing the book of demonology, how to burn witches and long hairs and people that didn't necessarily agree, because all the history is in your chemistry. I shaved my beard so I could be not seen as crazy for a while, but honestly, you have all recorded in your hair. I've not cut it since my son passed away, actually for several years before, so in theory you'll be able to put this on a film and read it one day. Your history. That's why some of the Hindu monks shave every day. So they shave away their past so they can be reborn every day. Well, I'm 70. I shaved off all my hair when I took my son away from the city so I could raise him and be with him for a little while in a country where, yes, in Texas, where the fact I had long hair, he got intimidated or picked on. So I had to conform, I thought. This is a bad thing to do. Carl Jung recommends you don't. I recommend you don't. After 46 moves in my life of being around a whole lot of people, and everybody's seeing me every time I move in different ways, this depicts part of what I knew way a long time ago would happen. Part of what I went back and found out on the other side of the veil, where time truly isn't the same. This is simply a holographic projection. If you see it correctly, it can be filled with other images and then come back. As Tesla hallucinated while he was watching and talking to people, tongues falling down behind them, and all those various things can happen between the perception and the deception, the distraction. But on the other hand, imagination, dreams, visions, channeling, writing, drawing. As this casket went around and the curtains closed, I went up above and suddenly I was seeing it happen. And it went over here and there was a couple hoses hooked up, lines, and it shot gas into there. And it was almost like a neon glass, just a neon energized gas. And then it moved along to the next spot and zapped it. And it turned liquefied everything inside of the clear casket. Glass, lucite. I had no idea. I knew I could see everything inside of it. And as it moved to the next slot, it sucked it all out and flushed it. And then it went around to the next spot and it put in another corpse, another human body. Dressed up, laying there, peaceful. And then it moved around to the next spot, and as people were moving into the room, it was moved out in the front. Just like the little place I went to see my son, just before he's cremated. They wanted to sell me a wonderful casket. I said, why? He's going to be cremated. Why would I buy a wonderful casket? And why did I have him cremated? Because bringing him back to America was very difficult, very expensive. I couldn't look at my son's face after being underwater for 3 weeks in the Seine River. That's when they discovered him. Who they are, that's another discussion, another story. Goes back all the way. Your father's sins should be paid for by your sons. Never forget that in war, please. Vengeance is done by the sons of the fathers lost, and they do it by taking the sons of their enemies and killing them so they can't ever do it again. And the cycle goes on. War goes on. War is hell on the families at home. This cycle, if you look at it now in today's, this was, again, I saw this in 1969, 70. Okay. This, all these lines, the extraction of the proteins, the extraction of the fats, the extraction of the muscles and all of the hemoglobin, everything that is in the side of this gelatinous shell, the skin, and the fascia, that beautiful silver lining between that people fill up with fat that goes really thick. You say, I don't have much left. That's because right now I'm in a recycle. Yes. We go into our cocoon internally. What does it mean to be reborn and still stay in the same body? To take on a new perspective, the new chakra. You're moving and elevating and seeing it now 7 years, but from a different view, perspicuity, perspective. What is the perspective you're viewing this cycle of your life from? In the beginning, at the bare bottom, I'm touching everything in my mouth. Oh my God, as a child, you touch everything, you want to taste it, you want to feel it, you want to throw it in the air, see if it breaks, you want to throw it on the table. That's what you do. And then you develop an appetite for one thing or the other. Oh, that felt good, that felt bad. Ugh, I'm going to eat that again. That's the next step. 7 years of viewing the world from whether it tastes good or not. But the first 7 years, at the root chakra, that's your emotions. That's how you want to deal with people for the rest of your life. That's how were you hurt, how were you traumatized in those first 7 years while you were in the womb, when you came out of the womb. I hardly ever understood why people don't understand the first 7 years is the most important, because I didn't, but guess what? That's what we planned. That was our shit show. We had to go through what nobody else could endure, because those of us who make it, this is the Beatles, this is the ones who went through the hardest times to become the greatest. John Lennon, you want to talk Hendrix, you want to talk any one of the wonderful people in the past that have suddenly disappeared or died. There's reasons, whether they want to conform to changing from 432 to 440. There are so many reasons people disappeared, from Malcolm X to Luther King to Dr. Luther King, John F. Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, and others who resisted, especially once LSD came along and the realization in the CIA that there was actually another realm. This was only part of it. We would be extracting human essence, not just the fluids, not just the fats, but literally the essence of what a human can be. Transhumanism. Now, I do want you to note, by the way, for those of you who don't note, right outside the venue, you can pick up some snacks. Want some protein snacks? Organic, all natural, guaranteed to be almost as human as you could ever want it to be. Now, do you want to buy the essence of somebody else? Because guess what? You could probably get out here if you wanted to order it. There's a lot of things humans take under the auspices of staying healthy, but at the expense of somebody else. Children, body parts. So, along the way, one day, there came a fantasy hero. Not just any fantasy hero, but Darby in his visions, in his drawings, in a way to spread Wibblry. It's supposed to be hard to say. Imagine me being serious up on stage and going, yep, we're going after those Wibblry people. We're going to attack them Wubbers, because they're trying to create a WUB, a world union of beings that represents not just humans, but worms and bees and whales, gorillas. They are crazy. I mean, they think dolphins can actually talk. They're going to go after the crazy people who wear charms or do what they consider to be magical or mystical or phenomenal. They must be witches or warlocks. Burn them at the stakes, said King James as he went to those events at 10 years old for the years of the demonology for 2 more years until they started to integrate the new King James version of the Bible. And I was down there in the Gutenberg press at 12 years old in the castle, and you look at the Gutenberg press, a very simple process. You simply put all your type letters, you put them on there, and you ink it up, and you have paper come down, and you roll it down, you press it, and you roll it back up, and you pull the paper out, and you put more paper in, and you ink it, and you do it again and again. And that was the modern presses of the times of King James. The first modern presses, the first internet of words. Now, first of all, if you could read, you're dangerous. If you could write, you were more dangerous in those days, because you couldn't do either without the approval of King James, or you lost your head, or you lost your hands, as warnings. Because if you killed Nobody ever could see what happens if you didn't obey censorship. I was an English American Lit major. What I learned was that there is not a true story out there in his story, because it was his story, King James' story, that had people put into insane asylums and had people killed and their children taken away and shipped off, and indentured servants. And if they were lucky enough to be an indentured servant and sent over here to America from Ireland or Scotland or any place that you took prisoners, you didn't want them around. If they weren't worth killing, they were worth using for slaves, indentured servants. Texas, incidentally, had a wonderful lumber industry, but unfortunately, they were paid with tokens, sent as indentured servants. That's why Germany had so many people in Texas that when it became a republic, it was one vote away from being German as the official language for the state of Texas, which would have been now the 8th biggest industrial and economic complex in the world. Basically, mostly German when it was formed. Now, there's good things and bad things about the Germans. I happen to like Germans because I'm a German, and I believe there's a very logical mind that goes with it, but they also get extreme sometimes. And that's why we have a conservative element to us. Admittedly, I moved here. I'm not from Texas. I was not born in Texas. I was born in Germany. I ended up here. I came through here in Killeen, Texas, coming back from South America. I did live in Killeen, Texas, actually. First time I got arrested. I didn't get arrested. I got picked up by the police. I was 6 years old, just turning 7. And we lived on the army base outside of Killeen. And my mom, my dad, my brother and sister younger than me. And I had gone up, and there was on the way to the elementary school, there's a little old gravel road for a little subdivision they put in. And back then, Johnsons were putting in the subdivisions because he'd moved the troops in. And Lady Bird owned the subdivision companies and the building companies. And they would build houses and then move more troops in and have much more demand for houses and drive up the value of houses. And this is how Johnson worked after Kennedy was killed, to go ahead and become rich. And also owned the Clear Channel radio stations, which was 1,500 radio stations strong, kind of like the Hearst Empire, except in radios. Why? Because guess what? You could control a lot of people's minds, propaganda, through the radio when the TV was still young. And Superman and other things like that, Popeye and cartoons like Roadrunner were allowed. Oh my goodness, violent now. The question is always, oh, wait a second, what happened to that poor young lady being thrown from one shoulder to the other, from Popeye to Brutus? Why, what? Anyway, victimizing animals and making fun of the weak, that's been done forever. I was in the age when, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a hippie. I worked from the time I was 12 years old. I had the luxury of being a hippie. I missed Woodstock because I had to work to be able to buy my own jeans, to be able to have anything other than black glasses. I wanted to have some beautiful, some wireframe glasses. And I was only allowed to have something so dark I could not wear them inside. Wireframes that were so heavy, it cut the insides of my nose just so I could see, but I wanted it to be cool. You'll see those glasses and the young Darby in his very youth. But again, the process of going from being beaten up and crippled and told you can't do things and told, I was editor of the newspaper in 6th grade, and all of a sudden back to Germany. And everything you know is ripped out of your hands. All your learning to do newspaper. Back then we did this on a mimeograph machine with that really stinky ammonia stuff. And we actually do the newspaper and write it all out. I was doing this in 5th grade and 6th grade. And somewhere along the line, they did IQ tests in those days, like John F. Kennedy was doing physical tests and everything. Also came the IQ test in schools. Would you believe that? Where would they go today? So it turned out they ran that. I'm about to run out of time, so I'm going to just cap this one off with this. I was told, my mother had been told at school, but they also told everybody on the PA system that they did the IQ test. I was in 5th grade. Out of the whole high school and junior high, there was only one genius. And it turned out to be me. The blind geek in the front row with glasses, still blind. And considered a crowd and picked on because I was a pacifist by then and couldn't fight back. And so because of that, I had a lot of extra grief. And then we pulled our roots and went back to Germany again. And I was in Germany for another year before I came back. But honestly, 2 years. 6th grade and 7th grade I spent over in Germany. Baumholder, Germany. Baumholder and Freiburg. The joke in Baumholder was the only thing that kept England from falling into the ocean was that Baumholder sucked so bad it kept the coastline from falling off. That's how I spent my first couple years as a teenager. And then I came back to Michigan. My dad went back to Vietnam. And everybody hated the soldiers in Vietnam, who were by then considered baby killers and not very popular. The war was not popular. And I went back to living at the end of Moody Street, actually the same old house, in the basement where my dad built my room when he went off to war. And at the dead end on Moody Street, that's where Darby had his first dreams. And the book of Wibblry and Wub began. And he said, why? Why, God? Why did you put me here? I can't be that hero, God. Why would you send a crippled kid? I had no optimism. I tried to commit suicide. I felt I was alone. Nobody but me. Why, God? I thought it was the vessel. I thought it was supposed to be the ego, the warrior. I didn't have that. I in those days, if I went like this, there was nothing there. Mind you, I went off from Darby, left home to go live with his dad as the alternative to suicide at 115 pounds, coming on 15 years old, stressed out, couldn't pick anything up, back virtually useless. It would pinch his neck, pinch his chest, he couldn't breathe, pinch his lower back. The chiropractor, when I first did the x-rays, it was like this. The Army didn't believe in x-rays. So from 7.5, when they discovered the broken back, Darby actually had no choice but to simply endure and take his spankings for not making sure he became a pacifist. If you got to fight, go pick out your belt, bend over, grab your ankles, bare butt, don't cry. You won't get any more fights. Why? Because if you do, you could be paralyzed for the rest of your life. And my dad did not want to have a paralyzed boy. He wanted me to be healthy. But anyway, I went to a chiropractor finally. He straightened me out some. Every time I'd walk home, we could afford me to go. I could afford to go 2 times a week. We had to pay for it. Army wouldn't cover it. U.S. Army didn't believe in chiropractors. They were quacks. And so I went down there. The story of the back. And I would go from the chiropractor's house or office less than a quarter mile away, walk home afterwards because my mom worked or wasn't available to give me a ride, and walk on the sidewalk. And if the sidewalk was bumpy and I'd hit wrong, I could actually throw my back out. And it'd be 2 or 3 days before I could breathe again or walk. In those days, if I reached down to get my books from underneath my desk, I could get pinched and get stuck and not be able to breathe until I started to collapse and catch myself with my one arm on the desk and use my arm and grab my books to get up, because I couldn't expose that I was hurting that bad or that weak in school, because it was bad enough with the bullies waiting outside my last class in literature. Thank goodness Mrs. Nelson chased them off. One of my heroes as a child. Literature, English literature class. Mrs. Nelson, the teachers you have when you're young, they can make an impression on you for your entire life. Good teachers are so hard to find. I was lucky. Didn't know it. I had some wonderful teachers. And the story is Darby. And I'm speaking, of course, channeling Darby. The experiences from having Mrs. Nelson be the one to tell me my mother had been beaten up in the laundromat by Stan Otis Burley, her boyfriend. About 6'4", bar bouncer, big big guy. I actually worked for him a couple times. Nicest guy in the world. When he was sober, he was a Christian, God-fearing man, and when he was drunk, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde in persona. Biggest, hardest, meanest bouncer in 4 counties around. They wanted somebody to take care of the crowd. They brought him in. He went like this, picked the guy up, carried him out, threw him out in the parking lot. And if he dared swing a punch at Stan, he had iron jaw. Teeth had already been taken out. Dentures. Now, iron skull. Looked like a lurch looking down at you. And he had balls, I think, of steel. So the man was just pretty much waist down, skinny toothpicks from waist up. He did concrete and blocks. I worked for him. The blocks, concrete blocks, 8 by 16s, and he would take them in one hand. One hand. And the other hand, he'd butter on the mortar. I was 115 pounds. That block was 48 pounds sometimes. I was like, I learned. I stacked all the blocks for him one at a time. And I took a quarter barrel of mortar in the wheelbarrow. I couldn't do more than a quarter wheelbarrow because I couldn't keep my balance, couldn't hold it. I was not strong. And trying to roll across boards and stuff like that. I got 75 cents an hour. I was 14, 15, 9, 15, 14. I started work early, but it made me stronger. Eventually, I worked on my back until I was 55 years old. Then I got over knowing and believing that it had to be that way forever and fixed it in part of the youthing. And I tried to teach that to people with a good chiropractor and good helpers, assistants, people believe in you and you believing in yourself. This is something I never had as a kid. This was unbelievable. Not even imaginable. As a body, as a physical body, as a manifestation. Unimaginable. Nobody in my generation ever thought you could look like this at 70 years old. But I'm here to tell you can. And I'm here to tell you that I'm the first one who would have told you it wasn't possible until I saw a man who was 118 years old, who is a famous man you can find on the internet. And you can watch him at the Qigong convention in 2012. You can watch him pass away, having done a sword dance in the year of his passing to the next that is impeccable. I couldn't do it. And he was 118 years old. So it gave me a whole new lease on life. And I realized we can become younger. Now, Cliff High is figuring this out. We've seen this done by others. We're not the only ones. I watched Greg Braden. He's a little ahead of me. He's 75 years old. He's on the 200-year plan. Well, you know what? If you stay on the planet, if you leave the planet, if you come back again, 200 years is just a tiny space. We are not alone. There are others coming. There are others already here. Under the oceans we've known about for years. There's entire colonies under the oceans that are over a mile wide. And they're moving across the ocean, harvesting minerals and actually able to completely operate a city from underground. All these things I've drawn over the last few years. Mind you, yeah, I was not an artist by nature. I never took an art class, actually. Oh, wait, no, I took one class for 4 weeks when I was back in Michigan school, in between going from Michigan for freshman, Oklahoma, Lawton, Oklahoma for sophomore, and then Michigan for my junior, and then Alabama, Enterprise, Alabama for my senior year. And I graduated cum laude and had 6 extra credits. I didn't want to even take the class. I had to take classes. And I got to give the welcome everybody, and then they didn't give any counseling for college or anything like that. And I'd done my deed. I promised my dad I'd get my high school degree, diploma, because he didn't get his, because right before then he had mixed up in a chemical class nitroglycerin. And that's just potassium permanganate and glycerin together makes nitroglycerin. If you shake it up, you can blow it up in your face if you don't watch out. And he did. It went through his hands, and he ended up in the hospital and didn't make graduation and lost the chance to get his diploma. And he went to the Army, always regretting that. Got it through GED, worked his way up from the bottom of the Army, all the way up to warrant officer, proud that he went in there and managed to do all that. But it kept him from going to Korea and being able to kill people right off the bat. So instead he went down to South America, and in his early 20s was killing people to help control Bolivia, La Paz, Bolivia, when the Americans controlled it and changed the president out 34 times in 52 years. Amazing how they were able to do that from just living on the sidewall of the presidential mansion. Amazing. That's what we did when I was a child. That gets you in trouble when you talk about it, even though it's not secret anymore. It's 70 years later. But still, I think that stuff still may go on, I hear. Who knows? So this represents these chakras. These are the different points at which you, as you go through your life, how you express yourself from your heart, where I have still feeling the last of a hole from another lifetime where that knife went through there. We come back and we get to go ahead and do it differently and maybe do it right. It's amazing. 49 years old, your eyes start opening, you wire the front lobes of your brain. If you're not doing alcohol all the time, you can actually develop the mature neurons that operate at 10 to 100 times the speed of the juvenile neurons as they feel into a new bus, a new architecture that operates with 11 outputs from a synapse instead of 3. No longer are you black, white, and gray of the legal world and the entanglements of reality, but now you have 11 outputs and you can deal with the other elements of the reality. So there's a lot of ways you can look at this. How much energy does it take to form reality tomorrow? Do dreams have any symbolism? Well, I say they do, because your Wubtron, that essence of you that then incarnates, can become something. What can it become? That's the tough one. It's kind of like, what's a moon? What does a moon do? Does it spawn life? Does it kind of monitor life when you park it on a planet, such as our moon was done years ago? I mean, if you look back far enough, there was no moon, then there was a moon. That's another whole subject for a lot of people. They don't understand that yet. That hollowness of the moon, that certain element. Why is it only pocketed and occupied on the backside and not so easy? Oh, it wasn't used to be so easy to see from the front side. Well, if you watch the story and understand what really happens, the moon's a very interesting place. You can spawn a moon, and if you do spawn a moon and move it to a place, or park it next to a planet and help them develop, help alter the genealogy, alter the genes, alter the RNA, the DNA, but most importantly the DHA, which gives us the human power to transform energy, sun, into energy life. So eyes convert sun into energy, and also the DHA in our eyes underneath our DNA is DHA. And the DHA allows us to then emit information, photons, out of our eye. Cool shit, huh? But then that's another story, another chapter. Now, if I were just drawing things, and I would you believe these just kind of came along? And if you're taking and trying to go ahead and make a point in society, and you draw things like this, you get in all sorts of trouble if they don't like what you draw. Did you know that? They can make sure that nobody ever sees anything you ever draw. Now, I have a poem out there I highly recommend everybody look at, just because it's kind of a fun poem. It's on YouTube still. It's called The Chasm at the Fringe. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's when you reach the point in your life when you have to leap across a gigantic chasm. And it's the one between where you've been and where you want to go. And if you go up to the edge of it and you look down, you'll see a lot of corpses, a lot of bones, a lot of dreams that fell to waste. They lost hope. They didn't make the leap. They took too much with them. They tried to make the leap and they weren't prepared. Their vessel was not ready. You can't take your past with you. You can't take your treasures with you. You make that leap across that chasm with faith. Listen to the YouTube version of The Chasm at the Fringe. And if you're going through that experience, you're going to understand that there's lots of hazards. Okay? Now, what's a hazard? Well, what if you're paying attention to everybody on the side. You're running as fast as you can, and you're getting ready. What if in your dreams, you're just in that dream stage? You know you have to go. Almost like as Darby was, intentionally leaving his body. Intentionally going off and asking the question, why am I here? I want to be a part of something. I want to contribute. I don't want to suffer and be beaten and literally have people come to your door and ask you to come out of the front yard so they can beat on you. And Darby had that happen. Luckily, Darby was still agile enough that he could pin somebody down and bleed on their face without hitting them. You could be a pacifist. That's a pacifist. He wants to beat you up and you knock them down and you pin them and you bleed on them because your nose bleeds real easy. And you bleed into their eyes and you bleed into their face and they jump up and run in horror and never come back again. You never had to hit them. Isn't that being a pacifist? If he caused a bloody nose, are you responsible for him getting blood on him? I was in my 50s before I understood that Jesus said that if the centaur, the Roman soldier, slaps you, turn the other cheek. Well, of course he's going to slap you with his ass wiping hand, left hand. And by slapping you, you're a slave. You're allowed to do that. Caesar says so. You can slap any slave, any peasant with your left hand, your shit hand. But if you dare slap him with your right hand, that's a challenge to a duel. Well, that's a whole different product. That means when you did that to me, well, thank you, I choose to pick the staff. Why? Well, I have to be very good with staff. You're not. Let's have a duel. You're allowed to do that. If you turn the other cheek and he slaps it. That's what Jesus said to do. Jesus was not a pacifist. No, he was actually an activist. There's a difference between a pacifist who's also an activist. He tells you how not to get hurt, how to defend your wife, how to defend your child, how to defend what you believe in. What does that mean? Well, he also said, if the centurion, the Roman soldier, tells you carry his pack for a mile, carry it for 2. Why did he tell you that? Because Caesar himself said that villagers are proud to help the Romans. They will carry their pack for a mile, no problem. But when you start making them carry it for 2 and you exhaust them, you make them tired, then they start hating Caesar. We don't want them to hate Caesar. No soldier, by decree of Caesar, will ever make a villager carry his pack for more than a mile. Of course, there was a customary mile in those days, number of steps determined by these things. Guess what? If you carried it for 2 miles and you put it down, you went, hey, Sergeant, he just made me carry his pack for 2 miles. The sergeant has 2 choices. Is he going to discipline that soldier with Roman discipline? Or is he going to face Caesar disciplining the sergeant for not making his troops keep from abusing the peasants after they had overrun their armies and taken their children to go off and be in the armies of Caesar? No. You don't do that. So, carry the pack for 2 miles. And the other thing people remember is in Leviticus, for those of you who don't, and I don't particularly necessarily think you should quote every chapter, you may not know them, but in Leviticus you may find that Jesus also said, you need a robe, of course. You're living in the desert. The rain, you can't just run around naked. You got a robe. It's waterproof with waxes, and it's warm. In the cold, you wrap it around you. But mind you, in Leviticus, Jesus says, if you do not own a sword, sell your robe, buy a sword, be able to defend your people. Why did he say that? Because after Jesus was given an option, hey, go on the cross or we come and slaughter your entire church. You're the head of the Church of Nazarene, and we don't like what you're saying. Well, he said, okay, I'll be there. And guess what? He was there. Now, he was on the cross for about 6.5 hours. He was considered dead. Pontius Pilate didn't believe it. They broke the legs on the other 2 guys. They were up there. They died because they were collapsed and couldn't breathe. And then they ended up taking them down in the festivities for the day. And they had Sabbath. Don't leave them up on the day of Sabbath. They put him back up later. And they put him into the tomb. And he's put in there with oils by the doctor and Mary, a woman of oils, and part of the Essenes. The Essenes, now mind you, the Essenes were part of one of the 5 churches in that day. And Yahweh, Jesus, was the leader of the church. He left that job to his brother, John the Right, I believe it was. And then it went on to the, later on, half-brother. And this is because they were assassinated as they wiped out the last of the scenes after the death of Yahweh, the crucifixion of Yahweh. Now, nobody ever said he went to heaven that day. None of the apostles showed up. None of that, dun, 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 you see the light go up in the air. You didn't see all that day. What you saw was him go into pretty much a coma, a dead state, and he wasn't bleeding or anything, and it looked like he was dead, and surely this is the Son of God, said the guard who stood at the tomb that night. When suddenly Jesus, Yahweh, was not in the tomb the next morning. And admittedly, he was seen later on. Of course, you could live for up to 24 hours on the cross, crucifixion hung up there, as the ambassadors were, when the lead ambassador came and asked for his 3 assistants to be cut down because they'd been crucified. Caesar had them crucified. He said, okay, cut them down, as the negotiations. And in doing so, what happened was, one of them survived. So we do know that people lived for more than 24 hours on the cross and survived it. Jesus was on there, that's why Pontius Pilate didn't believe it, for 6.5 hours. And 8.5 hours, they allowed him to be taken down and put into the tomb, assumed to be dead, of course. And then later on, the stories of him coming back and talking to people and being able to be seen again, much like Elvis, when Elvis went undercover on an FBI program and was able to live for many, many years in Graceland. People don't realize that, don't know about that, but he did. But the point is this: everything is not what you think it is. There's a lot of illusion in the world. The islands of the days of the prisoner, where they go off and they live on an island. Nobody else go to the island. They can't escape from the island either. That was Patrick McGowan. Remember him? The days of the spy and what they did with the spy when he tried to retire. Well, can you say Epstein? Can you say Enron? Can you say how many miraculous deaths can you have right as you go into the jail and never actually serve any time, you die? You trying to tell me? So, what you're looking at right here is a dream portrait. Imagine my house out in the back, Temple Tantra. And imagine, if you can, that there's also a beautiful story that goes with it. That should take care of my kitty cat, who's actually asking for food. I bet you didn't know that, did you? Kitty cats talk in pictures. They also talk in words. Water is wee, and now the other one you heard, that's food. Animals talk in pictures. Cats that live with me. Cats that live up front. Dogs. People. Telepathy works best in pictures. You get a whole lot said in a very short amount of time. Or you can have complex pictures that have a lot to say. Our time is here. The serpent. All of this. Should use purple sand for this one. I don't know how I'm ever going to put this up or post this. It's going to be so damn long. I should check. Is my phone? Is it running? Oh. Yeah, look at that. Supposedly, this is all being recorded. This is the beginning of my next decade of taking all these pictures out. The book of Wibblry and Wub. The children's version. The adult version. There's the whole story of what is wobbling, touching, communicating. How do we communicate, and what are the abuses of that? You can beat the hell out of somebody by touching them, but you can also heal them with a single touch. Why are we here? How do we get here? What is a wubtron? What is that energy inside of us we call spirit or soul? Can you pin it down, consciousness? We're finding out you can't. We're finding out we're in a quantum tunneling information system that's able to produce more energy that it takes in through food. It can actually take in energy from the sun, ultraviolet light. More skin, more exposure, more mitochondria functioning. Oh my goodness, melatonin production. And all these things that the body produces that are miraculous, and you try to build them in a lab and make them, good luck. It's expensive to buy this shit when you can make it naturally. and extract it at the funerama when you die. Especially if you die in terror like a child. And you can extract that adrenaline and all those chemicals at just the right moment and preserve your youth. I'm against that. Natural is the only way to go. Organic is the only way. No, Microsoft owns part of me. Don't want that. Or my child. Or anybody else for that matter who wants to own part of the DNA and then consider that a species as part of their collection. Like plants that are immune to certain poisons that they can then put out. We aren't going to allow that. My cat's going crazy because she knows there's other entities joining us right now. It's kind of funny to watch. But this, again, just a cartoon, guys, about Wibblry and Wubtron and how we, as a species, are a bunch of us that came here to make this happen. What is this? Well, what is Wibblry? It's a very small set of words. Keywords based on Wib, Wub, energy, soul, in body. Wib, capital W-I-B. I'm a representative for the Intercosmic Wub Society, by the way. I'm a whistleblower. Normally I can do better. I'm a little thirsty. But the point is this. Whistleblowers will be heroes. Not whistleblowers like me, but we've lost a lot of whistleblowers. I'm talking about the ones that have died already for this cause. To tell the truth. To get it out in the open. To see. So everybody needs to see what's going on. How do we do that? How do we do that? So that little set of words can go around the world. It's numerologically amazing when you start running those numbers out and extrapolating them. It's an amazing thing when you start thinking about all the things that we can do with our imagination. Contain a book. And if that book survives me, that's so dangerous that they have bonfires. They burn people's houses down. They burn down the Library of Constantinople. They burn down the greatest libraries in the world in hopes of destroying what can be hidden in a single book. You flip through some things and there's nothing there. It's just a bunch of goop or cartoons. What's hidden? What do you see? That's the whole mystery. It isn't necessarily what everybody else sees. I actually have a number of books ready to go. 12 million words written in the last few years. Finally got the drawings all done. Not all colored in, but I have a lot of plans. A lot of theses on how to build things, little houses, and drawings. Everything one would need if they want to create a small society of people that want to think free, believe in sovereignty. Now, some people think that's crazy. Some people don't understand that you can take and build something that simple. We have one, if you look online, YouTube, you'll see this being created. It's called the birdhouse, or it's also called Pig Sanctuary. This was generated and created by a man and a young lady. They're now living in Poland, and it was donated to a pig sanctuary for hogs. This incidentally describes Boolean logic, which is a good way to understand if a language or a concept or something somebody's telling you makes sense or not, or if they're just full of shit. Now, in time, we've learned that humans can do all sorts of crazy, wonderful things. But one thing they cannot do, necessarily, everybody is build, but see, draw it out in their mind. Take a picture, add on pieces, and then keep going until you create the reality. Okay? Now, some things you'd think would be obvious. This is one. Diagnose the word. Break it down. community. In theory, it's about communicating. Honestly, truthfully. It's about unity. What are you unifying around? Oh, we're going to burn witches. Okay, I'm not here. Bye. We're going to be just one religion wins and everybody else dies. No, sorry, not for me. Why? Because that's called exclusions. Like, you don't do it my way, you're dead. That don't work for me. Now, part of the reason is too many people die. More wars are fought over religion than anything else. You go, why? Why? Because people believe instead of have faith. And a lot of times they don't have a lot of choices. Now, some of the things people are going to ask, where do words come from? And I'm going to tell you, there's root words, there's base words, there's, we used to call transactional grammar when I went to college. Linguistic programming is another thing they call it now. What's that mean? Words have meaning. And a key word, a root word, can be grown upon. A wib becomes wibbling. Wibbling is what? Transmitting what you believe through mind to mind. Telepathy. Now, in this case, your dreams are what allow you to go ahead and make a big plan in the world for the future, or what you prophesize in your mind you're supposed to do. The parts of it are who you're supposed to meet. All the other people are going to help you. Why? We can't do this alone. I'm not here to do this alone. I'm not here to save the world alone. I'm here to help create a story about a young man who tries to do it. And why? It's fantasy. No one person can ever do it. Don't think you're the one picked. Don't think you're the only one in the room. You're just like one young boy picked to do one job. You may never even see the results of your work. But knowing the internet was coming, having the first cyber cafe to actually have the first conversation from Texas to New York City, the biggest cyber cafe in the United States to New York City, took the entire internet provider with 2 ISDN lines, slow, and he had to dedicate those lines going into his line, the trunk, into one conversation the size of your phone. And that was without even sinking the lips to the face. For 15 minutes, they had to go back on, so everybody else operating again, because they had to shut everybody else off. All the businesses on that trunk. So this was in a day when memory, for the first cyber cafe, they wanted me to go buy 8 gigabits. After I built the whole thing out and turned an old food stamp laundering operation into the first cyber cafe called the Discovery Incubator in Texas, by painting all the windows shut without getting a permit, converting a store with 12-year-old inventory into the cyber cafe that later on was shut down just before the dot-com boom started, because the employees stole all the computers because the internet was about to put money on there. They were going to scam them. They were called hackers. But also what I saw, the internet was dangerous. So be careful what you take into your mind. That was the first cyber cafe in Texas. And believe it or not, I lost about $150,000 on it in a very short amount of time. But it was worth it. Why? Because, as you may know, it's a never-ending story, guys. As the saying goes, we're all coming to the planet for the same reason. The little blue ball in the sky. It's a fantasy. A fantasy adventure for spirits from all over the cosmos. A chance to engage once again, to do battle in a holographic world where we can win this time. Why? Because we have the advantage. What's the advantage? Nobody saw this curveball coming. What's the curveball? Wibblry and Wub. Nah, that can't be. That's just too unbelievable to happen. Exactly. If I get Cliff High, who knows computers like nobody else in the world, and I've watched him for years, watched him die and come back to life because he found out about youthing, like I did. I've watched Greg Braden. who's managing to stay young at 75 and with his hair still popping up. Well, I don't do that, but I do have my own hair. And I had a nice gray beard, but oh my goodness, Darby, I should say, looks so old with those glasses. Brad, well, Brad's been around. I've been around for a little while. Now, Brad, once upon a time, in the days of being a boy toy, that was Brad. And I came to town, bit of a cad, and not a great moral base. My parents didn't have many. And then this young man showed up. And at 32 years old, this was my life. Now, he stayed around for 24 years. I would ask you to listen to his song. He came here to write music because I couldn't. I never learned how. Now, some of the music you'll see was not done right, but you have to understand the source, how it happened, another story. Ultimately, as Dali might say, tribute to Dali, time, it just really is so much different at this age. I'm 70, and how I see it, the fact that I can sit and meditate and breathe, prana breathe, control it, be patient, not squirm around like somebody's holding my butt down with a hook. Instead, when I was younger, to be able to establish the focus, to see the world at 70 from this view, I can't even begin to tell you how incredible it is. And so, as I go along, I've been drawing these pictures on for a couple of years now, and I try to do that while I'm doing my drawings. I'm also doing my writing. My best weeks have been about 350,000 words in a week. I need an editor. Know anybody? I need to go ahead and get some of this in print without having to give up the rights to go ahead and market it freely around the world. And thank goodness I don't live in Germany. Ich bin nicht eine Deutschlander. Ich bin Amerikaner. You can't take my money. You can't raid my bank accounts. You can't put me in prison for speaking out because I'm not a German citizen. But oh my goodness, my poor friends who are. And the Cattels. Oh my goodness, should we talk about the Cattels? The ones that wrote the authoritative version on the Biblica Helvetica Cattell. Or his son, who wrote during the time of the Nazis, which you're not allowed to talk about, but he said and defied Hitler. He spoke out and wrote and became the authority on the New Testament. Unfortunately, the one that was written by King James, it really was not an accurate depiction of what Yahweh, the leader of the Church of Nazarene, which was a Essenes-based organization that believed in the light coming from within, us being able to evolve and to come back, to be reincarnated. All these things were part of what Yahweh taught, and the Church of Nazarene taught until they wiped it out, along with the Gnostics, and eventually the Night of 500 Knives, and got rid of the Cathars. Not like as in Catholic, but the Cathars were actually much more Gnostic, and they wiped them out, down to the last castles, and then they took on the Celts, and they wiped out everybody, the Druids, that didn't agree. Burn them at the stake, said King James by then, or send them off as indentured servants. But a lot of people like that version. I think he was 12 when that came out. He was 10 when he wrote the book of demonology. You want to check those facts? Please correct me if I'm wrong. Now, it's important that we create these pure salvage outposts in my mind. These are outposts where we salvage the best of our past. The history, the manpower, the Tartarian era bells, if we can find them, all the information, even the Monopoly game, rare as it might be, with the banker running with his monocle, the one that's disappeared now, on all the games. But having relatively a photographic memory, I remember the banker, I remember the monocle. So how do I spot the guys on the other team? There's two teams out there, two computers running against each other. The hologram isn't just a one computer operation. So our team is working on one computer, and we see the Monopoly guy, and we see a whole bunch of other things. The Mandela effect is kind of taken out with the digital age. Digital thinkers are people that think based on what's fed into their system versus the analog system they already have, the memory system they've managed to maintain, and to keep as an analog thinking system versus a digital thinking system where you can, oh, I'm going Michigander speeds. Thank you, sorry about that. So, slowing back down again, pure salvage outposts, put together out of the best of the past, houses for the future, organizations, places where people can have babies naturally, through fertility, without being modified, through technology and other means of making babies that aren't really necessarily totally human. In a sense, they don't have the full capacities of imagination, sovereignty, and a belief in, through imagination, God. If you wipe out imagination, how can you imagine there could be anything greater than a human, or the distractions that come with it? I don't think you can. Now, if people want to go ahead and do stuff, they want to start places like that, they want to go ahead and build, I want to support them. But there are logistics. How do you come get the materials? What's your plan? Do you have one? Where you can put them? They're going to rot outside. What is your plan? I've offered this up before. This is an old cartoon. Why? Because this is a way to go ahead and describe things. If you want to pause on that, you can read it all. Go to my past posts. Rubbles. Little blue racing cap, wireframe glasses, little planet on his back on a carpet. It came here as an avatar to help bring Wibblry and Wub to the world, to let you know, hey, you wipe out the nematodes, the worms, there ain't no way to irrigate. There ain't no way to get air down below. There's no way to support the ecosystem under the ground. Gotta have worms. So Wibblry and Wub is about having the worms and being able to go ahead and digest the past to form a future and make it good. Now, how do we do all this? How do we distribute it? All those kind of questions. That's what all these are supposed to be for. Because I can't seem to speak in a language that people can understand, so I try to put a picture is worth 1,000 words. These were just numbers I put out at one time so people kind of understand and estimate what the value. So they'll go out and do this. They'll go out and do what? Run past the dragon and leap that chasm at the fringe. Einstein was a copycat, but he did say some cool things, and one of them was that you don't find the people that are most creative and the most inventive. They're not out in the flocks being led by the shepherds to the slaughterhouse. No. They're not being led by the swindlers who buy their babies and sell them off. The swindlers who lie and cheat and steal along the way. The shepherds are not doing that for the benefit of the herds. They're selling on the sheep and doing what they need to get it back home, to be harvested for its wool, for its meat. Now, on the side of those black sheep at the edge of the chasm at the fringe, I am proud to be a black sheep at the chasm. Because with a good leap, if you're lean and you can make it, you realize at some point, I don't have to go to the slaughterhouse. I can leap across. I can reach the other side. I can reach a new plateau. I can be free of King James and the dragons that haunt us from our past. But it takes what? If you go across, what? We may be able to build a bridge. Because once somebody sees it can be done, others will follow. If you build it, they will come. Now, who are they? Well, that's a good question. Who are the other beings in the intercosmic Wub society? The other world unions of beings that have joined together. Lots of worlds from lots of different parts of the cosmos. Traveling through wormholes and all sorts of methods. What are those? I couldn't have told you that at 15 years old, because when I was 15, all this was impossible. You couldn't go out and draw pictures and imagine things and create them. This is Darby's Canyon, which I plan to own again soon. I have given it up in a long battle, against evil systems. Swindlers, liars, and thieves. They do exist. But in a cartoon world, fantasy, you can determine a lot of the future by visualizing it. Most of the people can't do that. Most of the people cannot get through this veil, channel this energy. Stones, crystals, the power of the mind, the heart, the instincts, the gut. Born together. Just because they stretched out doesn't mean they're not intuitively connected. We know now we have neurons and we have synapses, same as the brain, in our gut, in our heart. And the power of our heart, oh my gosh. Until I lost my son, I had no idea how much emotion could feed. Give me the power to draw these, color them, and oftentimes in just one day. I spent 3,400 hours in the cabs of machines. That's 8 years of 40-hour weeks. I did it in less than 3 years. So I would have the time then to write and to travel the world and have a place here for other artists, an artist fortress. And from here, we can cast our ideas into Web 3, where they are automatically going to be blockchained and protected. Now, anybody puts anything else out there, it can be cross-referenced to Web 3. And guess what? I heard through the grapevine, they came up with a really cool name for these new blue light free monitors and a new network linked up to Web 3. You know what they're going to call that, I hear? Me, M-I, and we, W-I. Now, it happens to be great that I've had me, W-I, me, M-I-I, and we, W-I-I, and I've been writing on this and doing this book for 50 years. What a coincidence that the new phones and the new network, they'll be free of being copied so that all of us artists can post our stuff. What do you think? Web 3 will lead to all the beings on the planet, but not just our planet. All the beings that create things, including art houses that you can live in for life. They loophole around all the other rules so that you can go ahead and have a tiny place, a portable building that doesn't get taxed like a house. Because why? It's a portable building. It's the turtle tribe. The Lakota said, when the turtle tribe and the snake tribe return, that is the time of transition. We are in that time. The turtle tribe are the people that move their home on their back. The snake tribe is the tribe that learns how to use the venom of the snake, the media, the internet, all that. Learns how to use that against the evil empire. Once upon a time, Darby drew a picture, and it showed how they would try to go ahead and isolate you and make you pay for the farts and all this stuff that was so made up in order to control people, to get them to isolate and be scared, to be willing to pay whatever it takes to stay alive. Sadly, very sadly, a lot of people are dying because of that. So, along the way, I just did for display, for a wedding. Just a wedding. And this is what I created. A school, Dragon's Lair. All this land as a refuge, as an embassy. What's it called? It's called the Embassy of Wibblry and Wub. There's lots of land already, water, but I don't want many humans. Just certain humans to come and stay here and others to come and learn. to be able to grow this, to be able to take this around and create outposts everywhere so that other people find that door of opportunity. Why? Because if you know you can make it, and you get together as a group and you create a co-op, and the co-op is able to take things and to do things. I wrote a lot of things in the past. I've done premonitions. This isn't even colored in yet. Time goes by so fast. But in my premonitions I've made in the past, you'll find that some of them were actually quite true. I published them, and they all came relatively true. I didn't believe in prophecy when I was young, frankly. I thought, nah, that can't really happen. Actually, it can. I drew these pictures for a man one time, a black gentleman, some would say, that didn't know him. The story of a snake. He pretended to be a friend. I drew this for behind his bar. I was going to supply him all the materials to make all this, so you get people come out, their families, for picnics, so he said. But he also ran in that very place prostitution, gambling, drug dealing, gun running. God gave me a premonition after the man stabbed me in the back on a business deal, denied that I'd done anything for him, and he told me that the man would die by a gun, bullets. Indeed, his nephew took him out. There's another simple structure to look at doing, and ultimately, this gets down to, what do you have? What are your inventories? What is salvage about? More millionaires are made out of salvage than any other business. But who needs $1 million? You need houses for our children. We need communities. We need solutions. We're coming up to the end of the year. I'm going to have a massive liquidation sale. I'm going to begin 2026 trying to fuel many outposts where people who believe in having natural born children raised naturally without technology, stealing their brains and taking away their opportunity to learn how to think. Those first 7 years, natural, free of forced vaccinations, free of all sorts of things. Give them 7 years with good elders teaching the old ways, salvaging the best of the past and passing it forward, along with taking the best of the present. Once we see the damage, it's like letting your children do sugar and drugs and white flowers and all those things that were marketed for so many years through the TV when I was young. Why I was so sickly, why I was so bad, depressed because sugar takes out the magnesium out of your brain, takes the chromium out of your brain. And salts from the table salts are horrible for you. We know this now. Stop the madness. So I'm going to go ahead and have huge sales. You bring in the semi-truck, you bring in, we can supply tools and show you how to do these outposts and train people and give you certified territories where people come to you knowing you're a community that doesn't believe in pedophiles, that does not believe in raping young girls, does not believe in human trafficking, does not believe in technology teaching children to be stupid, because they've proven that is what happens now, and they're stopping it. They're taking out technology out of the classrooms in foreign countries because they've shown dramatic drops in creativity, in intellectual absorption, in memory buffers for short-term and long-term memory. It's all being lost to computer technology, like I saw and foresaw when I had the first cyber cafe and saw what cyber sickness was. A woman vomiting violently over a toilet, 3 months pregnant, because she got that stupid helmet on her head, VR helmet, and it caused her to have problems after she took it off. Within 15 minutes, 20% of the people had serious problems. So I saw these things early. I want to stop it from taking over our children. I've been studying this for longer than most of you people watching this have been alive. Community. Unity. if you don't do this, if you don't come together, folks, it's getting pretty serious. Now, I said I made that canyon you saw. If you haven't actually seen the canyon, that's the canyon. Darby's Canyon. I made that in 3 months, 70-foot deep cliffs. I told Trinity before I started, when I got done, I'd have water coming up out of the ground. Look at that, I did. What do you know? Forgot to, no earth sculpting permits necessary, it seemed. Back in those days. That's the old days. Now, if you want to look at what you can do, well, if you're some of the right people, I'd love to have some of the people come here and be teachers and help share and show others how to make more things. When you go to the mirror, what do you see? Do you see a chance to reflect? Do you have a chance to walk up and step through the veil? Step through the glass. Go beyond the looking glass. Go beyond the curtain. Back where the Wizard of Oz controls the sticks. Mirrors are special. Mirrors are very special. People should understand. Now, I told you I did some posts. I did this with the intention of seeing what would happen the following year. I said 6 months, but I wanted 12 months from the date I did it. You might see some of these predictions, you might understand what they say, you might say it's totally bullshit, but I believe in Edgar Cayce and Nostradamus and others who have prophesied these times. These did not come without the planets and the stars to be aligned. For those of you who don't follow that, follow Vedic astrology, this I will build one day, or follow some of the other things along the way, it's wise to consider what I thought was bullshit when I was young, because I'm not young anymore, and it's not bullshit. There's a lot of value in what we can learn by just going out there and studying. This is kind of the simple stages of, I want you, if you want to plan a tiny house community, please take a peek, pause it, do screen capture. Look at that, how generous, because you can. I'm not trying to keep you from being able to use this. Don't go out there and use my drawings and try to make money off of them. That's not the purpose of all this. If I was trying to make money off of it, I've not been monetized, ever, ever, ever. Facebook actually did it to me. They did one day. I was due $2,000 the next day, and they suddenly lost my name. Again, draw a picture. This is over here at one of the ponds where the bridge is, and one of the houses that could sit there. That's supposed to be the retreat. Somebody wants to come and buy the retreat, they could live there. Be one of the people that lives on the property and never has another bill. Again, these are the images of what I had visioned and created solo in my 60s. Dug the ponds, we have well feeding them, we have rainwater. The rainwater capture is amazing. Why am I doing this? I want to go ahead and try to teach everybody. I need help making this new website. Can't be done in my name. Why? Because I'm so censored and shadow banned, and my Brad W. Cattell identity is too well known in some places. So Loopholology has to be about the loopholes. How do we get around the system? How do you get from being ghosted? How do you get around the world and get Wibblry through the loopholes? Become a Wubber. Share. Because nobody's ever going to expect that a bunch of Wubbers are going to go ahead and we, together, form a new reality, a surreality, known as the future. Through Loopholology, of course. Now, Loopholology.com is not active at the moment, but if anybody says it, calling you from there, it doesn't exist right now, because I have not brought it online, because I don't want it to get banned before I ever get spotted, and I want this to get out there a little ways. I need help. Somebody like Cliff High, who has the ability to go ahead and make things viral or see them coming. That's what he did so well. he was able to go out there and spot the future as it was happening and being planned. What did the computer see? Well, the computer, believe it or not, is about that very thing. What can be seen? What can be seen before it actually shows up on the horizon? What can be planned before it actually manifests? See my house? See the water? See the caves? What can happen if you plan ahead? Could you have an outpost where you could build houses and roll them out on your community? As fast as you roll them out, you bring more materials in and you have a little shop, one container, it is your shop. This is how we do the Pure Salvage Outposts. This is how we see the future if we choose to see the future. Do you choose to see a future? What kind of future? What do you envision for your children? Are you envisioning wonderful, positive things? Are you just talking about them? What does envisioning mean? Envisioning means that you're willing to go out there and say, hey, we see what's going on. We need a world union of beings that see what's going on and work for the benefit of the people. That's called WUB. What? Nobody expects us to use their words against them. That's a 3-letter organization like God. Heck of a 3-letter organization, because God speaks in many ways. This is the embassy for what can be. The land that I've been fighting for, that hopefully this week we'll see a victory. With that victory, this is it. The possibilities. Private membership. No, I don't want pedophiles. No, I don't want Sharia law. I don't want some man determining my 13-year-old is his because he's the oldest man in the group and gets to decide that because of his religion. No, there's a lot of things that Yahweh, Jesus, studied when he went around and studied from all around the world before he came back and challenged those who, when he got angry and went in there and tore down their money exchanging operations under the guise of being a church. Sound familiar? It didn't last very long. Haven't drawn that one in yet. Colored it. Want to help? So, as you start looking at the possibilities in life, the points of salvaging America's best. How do you do that? What if you had millions of dollars of materials? You could build 500 houses and spread them out, and then each of those outposts starts drawing in more and more local materials, and more local houses get built, and more people participate, and thus reduce the cost of their houses, their homes, their communities. And when they leave to go on trips, their communities protect their stuff, and nobody comes in and takes it because they don't like the way they act, and nobody comes in and burns their stuff because of that. I want you all to understand that it's important at this point in our lives. It's very important. There's so many ways for us to communicate. Would you believe these were ways of encrypting things in the old days? You could lay full paper and make your crypto device out of a folded piece of paper. Where are the holes? What letters are under the holes in the book? Cryptography has been around for a long time. How do you hide things? Crypto computers, crypto coin, everybody thought their stuff was hidden. Now they're busting people and putting them in jail because every transaction has a record. So Web3, we want to go and start posting things. Artists, why? Because everything has a record. Somebody takes your stuff and copies it, hidden inside of it, in crypto. In a picture is your signature. And this works, guys. I was in the computer industry, in the cryptos, and this works. So, don't have to go through what I went through. You don't have to bleed. You don't have to be stabbed in the back. You don't have to play the game that way and be the one that stabs people in the back. Now, I'll be coming back on in my power suit. I'll be coming back on to carry on longer conversations over many years. I hope I got another 10 years. I'm 70. Sounds old when I was a kid. Sounds young now that I'm 70. Men don't reach our peak till 66 to 78. And I'm watching my fellow guys that are there ahead of me. Cliff High, Greg Waden. Oh my goodness. It just, you can't imagine. You know, Joe Dispenza. These are all people that I've watched, along with others. I watched, in the old days, Tom Hopkins learned how to sell, sales. I took courses in sociology to learn how to deprogram people who got caught up in cults. I studied literature, English American literature. I studied Middle Eastern cultures. I studied a lot of things in this college. I took way too many classes, 21 credits a term, worked full time, 16 credits in the summer, and carried a 3.66 average. It was an A, didn't need a 4-point. And I was able to go out and work as a waiter and many, many other jobs. I had 30 jobs before I turned 30 years old. I was not the good long-term employee kind of guy, but I learned a lot of stuff. Along the way, one of the things I did learn, though, when I started working for myself and having people actually manage better, because I was not a good manager, is that success depends on your willpower, your heart, your determination, your willingness to work, do the work, not ask somebody else to do it for you. If you're not going to create the solution and be part of the solution and do it, you're going to sit on the sidelines and watch the football players do the game, or the basketball players, or whatever. If you're a sit-on-sider, or you're one of the active participants, the world is now ready for the active participants, the Light Brigade. Yes. It's our turn. We spent a lifetime preparing for this. We picked our parents. We're indigo. We came in when we came in to pick up again the battle. I come from a long line of Cattels that have written authoritative versions, views, translations of the African Bible, August Cattell, of the New Testament, of the Old Testament, the Helvetica Cattell, or particle physics. Yes, particle physics. The authoritative version of that was by a Cattell professor in California. How is that possible? That I would go back to Germany, even though I was made in America. Yes, conceived in America, seed planted in America, but I'm American. But I went back to Germany to be born, so therefore I was also German. Ich bin Deutsch geboren, Nürnberg geboren. Ich habe in Nürnberg gewohnt, nein, aber habe gewohnt in Kaiserslautern, Pirmasens und Baumholder. See, Germany is a great place. It's just very small. We could fit Germany between Luling and Houston and never make it to the top, never make it to the bottom of the state. It's that small. Yet Germany is one of the most powerful countries politically in the world. England, same thing. We could shove England in the corner of Texas and forget about it. Like Big Bend and the desert part of Texas. That's all of England for the most part. You want to take Scotland and Ireland and throw them in there, but they're not actually part of England. Because if you let them give them a chance to go, they'd be gone. They are kept there through hundreds of years of starvation, of being shipped off to America to be slaves, the white slaves before the black slaves came to Texas to run and be in the lumber industry, not to run it, but to be part of the slave culture where they paid with tokens instead of dollars until 1933 and 34 when the Texas legislature required them to pay with dollar bills. The lumber industry wiped out trees and forests that were thousands of years old. Paid $1 an acre for it in 1900 and let it go back for taxes after they stripped it. With people that were virtual indentured servants and couldn't pay them though. So, that said, my cat, who's been telling me there's lots of other entities joining us today, and I haven't even published it yet. Goodness gracious. Zap. Zap. If you ever decide to make a magic wand, and you want to use a stick and crystals, don't think you're crazy. Just do it well. Copper, crystals, wood, You know what? There might be something to it. There might be something wearing things on your body to protect you. Shungite. All sorts of possibilities. People made entire beautiful pieces in the old days. The dragon working his way up. Done in a day. This wasn't easy, I guarantee you. And why? Because they had an idea. An idea. Revolutionary. This one actually blew out its filament, but I have some. And you know, if you take this and you get the right fixture, you can make these exist. And you put 80 volts in there instead of 110 volts. This produces an infrared light that will heal everybody in the room and never burn out the filament. The filament was made to take a lot more power. This was 1,000 watts of power out of a single light bulb. If you turn it down to 80 and with a rheostat, you can make this thing actually produce infrared light for everybody. Why do you think they outlawed the filament light? Got an idea? I got a good idea. When I lived in South America, we went to Cochabamba and we actually went to the festival, and they go around in these giant costumes, devil costumes, that represent the devil. And they have a big parade every year, and these people dance, and they have the most glorious time to go ahead and kind of represent how the devil can be overcome. Just like the Monolito. I showed a picture of this in my house that my dad bought this tall in South America, but it represented the one that was 30 foot tall. That I remember seeing in a picture of me standing next to it. My dad took the picture. He had a camera. We went around South America, Peru, and all those places as an American with a family, so my dad could take pictures of all the dams and all the structures and all the other stuff. The family pictures kind of went along with that. But we had a photo lab in the back garage in 1959-60 in La Paz, Bolivia. That's 11,000, 14,000 feet up in the air. And in one car garage in the back was a photo lab where my dad personally developed his own pictures. Isn't that crazy? Living on the side wall with 3 other white guys, no uniforms. And the president of Bolivia living on the other side of that back wall. It was about 12 foot high, a little more than that, 14 foot. So I had to go up over the maid's quarters, the gardener's quarters to get to the top of the wall where the daughter of the president actually called the gardener and had to put the ladder up, and I went down and played. My dad eventually figured that out and was very upset having come to the front gate to honk the horn to get me to come home because the maids told him what I had done. First time I got away with it with just being told not to do it again. The second time I got my ass whipped and didn't sit down for several days because we were not supposed to be making it obvious that I was there or Dad was there. He was playing the role of being a bar owner at the most actually popular club in town. I think by bringing money in and buying into it and being a drinker and having parties at our mansion, because we lived in a mansion, because $1 would buy you 30,000 Bolivian dollars in those days. The maid, when my brother and I put toads in the maid's bed and she ended up getting pregnant with twins, went to court and actually won the case against my dad for 30,000, maybe 60,000 Bolivian dollars. To pay for the twins because that was a fertility symbol and we had put them in there as a joke and she got in the bed and they got pregnant from the frogs, of course, the toads. That was the story. But yeah, that was the day when my dad would come home from going out to blow up a dam or something and come back with shrunken heads off the guys they had killed, the cannibals that had attacked the convoy of him and the other 2 guys going out. And he said they would be chewing coca leaves and you would literally pull out, he had 22, and he said they would just go right through him. They would just keep on running at you. So he took out the 45 and was shooting him with 45. They'd knock him down, they'd still get back up and run. But they couldn't get out of the truck because they pulled back a bow, which my dad brought back, that was 6 foot long. And sitting on the side of the hill, these short little guys pulled back the arrow 6 foot long and released it, and it went through the side of the deuce and a half, the army truck, and pinned them, not through their legs, but right above it, went through and caught on both doors and pinned them into the cab while the guys attacked. This was the stories my dad had to tell me, and he was probably by that time, I was 20, he was 20 when I was born, 1920, yeah, 20, barely. And so he was probably 24 years old, 25 years old when he was out in the jungles of Bolivia, Peru. doing assignments without a uniform for the U.S. Army. Now, people say that doesn't happen. Right. That's another story. All right, I'm going to call it off. I've had enough. I need to go some water, and I want to thank you. I'll break this up, but hopefully I've put together some of the book of Wibblry and Wub and Darby and reduce the mystery with history as I present the book to the world that I've spent 50 years working on to create, to have the money, to have the embassy, the place for people to come, to learn, to build, to take this outward. The materials, everything is ready. I've written 12 million words in the last 4 years, and I plan to now finish the drawings and everything. I've been doing this in the last 4 or 5 years now. Focused. So that from 70 to 76 to 78, my life will be as great as any kid could imagine growing up to have and to be a writer. No writers ever get famous at this age. No writers ever accomplish that. I'm too old. By all standards in history, I'm way too old to become famous before I die. I'm okay with that. I don't actually like being famous. And I don't like leaving my ashram, my Salvage Texas I created. But I've got books that I need to get out there. I've got a story to tell about what we're doing to our brains, of our children, questioning humanity. Why? Why are we doing these things? So we're at a crossroads. This is so small you probably can't read it, you can't see it, but it's in my other cartoons. It's part of the books. And the idea behind the idea of having us work together is that very few people could do this alone. And in this day and age, it's gotten very hard. I was lucky. I lived a life that allowed me to envision, to draw, and to make these part of a book. Hopefully somebody will want to read it. Hopefully somebody will want to see what an old man can create in his late 60s and in his 70s. The idea behind this is, when I was young, I wanted to go ahead and make an impression. Then I saw this was going to happen. You'll see that cartoon in full size in one of the books. That ultimately people were going to sell out thinking that the internet was going to tell them what they needed to know. You'll see in my pictures, you'll see in my drawings, you'll see some of the prognostications. We need heroes that can see through, sew up this rip in reality. Others are coming. We're not the only ones. If you read the detail of the threads in the flying carpet, yes, integrity, light, all these things, just part of a book, a fantasy fiction. Please, consider, I need help on a lot of this. I want others to share. I want us to travel. I want us to get the word out. We can make a difference. All the eyes, not just me. The ones that see what's going on, we can make a difference. I implore you to join me. Simple things like finishing out the retreat, putting it out by the water. Simple things of learning how to do it, and once we learn, we can share. Please go to tinitexashouses.com. It's poorly set up, but you get to there and you get to the writings. Or tinitexashouses.substack.com, and you can find Wibblry and Wub, how to become a salvage miner, how to become a salvage hunter. Oh, and goodness, please, how to come and steward this massive inventory and get it into the hands of the people who can help. I'm done being a merchant. My Siddharthic cycle has ended, and I'm time to move on, like water in a river. In my 70s, I'm not the person I was when the river was just cutting through the rocks. I've become part of the chasm. I've become one of those people trying to build that bridge once you leap to the other side. Show people how to do it. And together, we create a bridge. A bridge from insanity in this reality to a surreality, a future that only some of us can see. The ones that see the monocle on the Monopoly Man, perhaps, and other Mandela effects that separate the two computer systems, operating systems, and the minds of those who see the world, the Matrix. Please stay informed. I tried to break this up in segments of about 10 minutes. Subjects will change. You may see this change. This is a very long Sunday ceremony, a sermon. Hopefully this week, God willing, the doors will open, opportunity will flow forth. It depends on if I win the battle, which I believe I will. And if I do want you to help me come share this vision for tomorrow, for many communities, united, communicating. Wubbers, operating in the name of Christ consciousness. You know, they didn't use the word Christ for 200 years after Jesus, Yahweh, passed away. There was no Christendom, that was all because they, the Essenes, were seeking Christ consciousness. That was the whole center of their being. Christa, the light from within. Read more, study more, but don't use the King James Version, please. Know the man was not worthy of being followed after he was out there burning the witches and the warlocks and the people that didn't believe the way he did. Understand that. Don't give him credit for the Bible. He didn't write it. He was 12 years old. Blessings to your day.